Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here on Chai Time. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season. It's been such a long time since we've been at the studio with everyone, and I hope everyone had a great time celebrating with family and friends, and even, some of you all having your own personal time for yourself, which is so important these days. So, our last episode of 2023 ended with such a great topic, science on gratitude and empathy. It was very fascinating to learn about, the importance of gratitude and empathy. And if any of y'all want to listen to it, please go on our podcast, which is on Apple Podcast or Spotify, and it's called Chai Time Podcast. So if you've missed any of our episodes for 2023, you can listen to all of them out there. So today we begin our episode in 2024 with another great topic, which is psychology behind motivation. And joining us in the studio, I hope I pronounced her name right. I've been practicing it. Is Arwa Al-Mazrouai, and our dear friend who needs no introduction, Mahtab Moradi, Behavioral Health Project Manager of Sina Foundation. So a little about Arwa. Arwa is a licensed professional counselor in the state of Texas and a national certified counselor. Arwa is a bilingual behavioral health clinician dedicated to assisting individuals in their journey to overcome obstacles and achieve their goals. She specializes in helping individuals navigate depression, anxiety, grief, complex trauma, life transitions, identity, and cultural issues. Wow, that is all heavy stuff.
Yes.
And people who are on Facebook Live, look at Arwa.
Thank
How
you.
do you do all of that?
Oh,
wow,
she does.
You're amazing.
Thank you, Lynn.
Welcome to Chai Time.
Thank you. It's great being here.
So today's, topic is motivation. So let's begin with, defining what is motivation first.
Yeah, absolutely. In therapy, we talk about motivation. We talk a lot about kind of like the why of why we do the things that we do. And we use a style of conversation. It's called motivational interviewing. And it aims to strengthen kind of that motivation towards change and also the commitment towards change, because motivation alone is not enough. We also need commitment to make big changes.
So one of the things that we have done at Ibn Sina is actually integrate the change talk or motivational interviewing skills or tools into basically our daily practice. Motivational interviewing skills has been around for many, many years, and it's a therapeutic tool to engage folks in the language of change and commitment and maybe some barriers. Sometimes, it's New Year's. Yes. We all want to change something. Yeah. Maybe it's something we didn't do so well last year, but why do some of us absolutely never get to the action part of that plan? We all have good ideas, but oftentimes we don't know what to do with those ideas. So what Arwa is referring to is, in therapy, assessing a person's commitment versus plan and sorting out those barriers so that we get them more into a kind of the action phase. And once you have them in the action phase, then you can start teaching new habits. You can kind of tie their plan of action to purpose, because we're more likely to sustain a new plan or a new behavior if we believe that it's tied into a core value or a purpose that we have. We're more likely to show up for that goal. So it's really interesting, and it's a long process. Arwa is part of my team at Ibn Sina. We are going to take almost 7 months to dive very deeply into those skill sets. So they've already have thousands of hours under their belt to sit where they're at, unless it's deceiving because she's so young and so are the other team members. But it's really impressive to see how they're helping people and breaking down these complex constructs, because it's frustrating. We get excited about change, and then we fail at what we're trying to change. So sometimes we give up, and it takes a toll on our psyche, right? If you keep trying something and it doesn't yield any results for you, then that kind of impacts you on an emotional level. So I think change is a very tricky thing, because we're creatures of habit.
Right.
And one of the things that I assess with even my coaching clients and in therapy is that, why change? Give me sweeten up this deal. Why should I leave the behavior I know and that I'm comfortable with, that I can predict, even though that behavior may be a really bad one? I know we ended up last year with me on all the addiction issues, right? So we're very well aware that some behaviors are not good for us. But it takes somebody who is skilled in motivational interviewing to really break it down on, okay, why am I stuck in this cycle? And how can someone help me get out of it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you kind of alluded into this, Mahtab. It's really important to kind of tap into the intrinsic motivation, like those values and beliefs that we hold. And like, how is that related to like that desire for change? How does it underlie that? And then asking like, how are we going to do it when we talk about commitment? So the plan part of it. So how do we make a realistic plan, and kind of maybe reward ourselves every time we achieve like a small bit of that plan towards achieving the goal.
I like Arwa and I are working on a case together, because my specialty is relationship psychology, and so we've signed up on a few cases where we can kind of cross over our skill sets. And it's been fun. It's actually a couple, and Arwa's meeting with each partner separately, and then we're going in as co-facilitators for the couples work. And when she's doing her beliefs inventory, she's finding that there are a lot of these core beliefs that are hindering, for example, the intimacy between these partners. So I want you to talk a little bit about like what the husband was dealing with, one of these rigid values where it was hindering his ability to commit to changing and essentially moving close to his wife, because it was a barrier to their intimacy and connection.
Yeah. There was perhaps this fear of kind of vulnerability. Maybe if I reveal like the vulnerable part of me, I may not, well, maybe my wife would hurt me, then I would be kind of like more vulnerable to being hurt. And maybe she would use that kind of like against me. And so we're kind of trying to work on what it takes to create a safe space between the two partners to kind of open up. And kind of like make those bits for connection. And
But you did such a good job with him on breaking down his, it's a cognitive distortion essentially of, because I believe this, I can't change. And how many times are we in positions in our lives where really our worst enemy is our belief system? And we tell ourselves, I can't change. This is just the way I am. And we lose partners over it. And we create distance between us and our kids because we are just hanging on to this fixed idea. And so it's very important that I think every person should have a baseline knowledge of the psychology behind what motivates you, our belief system, and how to actually change behavior as a result. Because otherwise I personally don't like feeling stuck. And and this is something that helps me break that cycle. When I feel stuck, I'm like, okay, what's my core belief system around this issue? How is that linked to my belief around change? Am I being rigid about it? You know, one challenging era of my life was, you know, like after my divorce, and changing my mindset around what it means to be a good mom, and making adaptation to being like a one parent orientation versus calculating all my parenting approaches to include a third party. And some of us will play victim to what's lacking. Whereas if you get very good at recognizing your own limitations on what motivates you to move, to get out of bed, to do something better for yourself, you may surprise yourself with what you get.
Yeah.
And how beneficial that is.
Yeah. I think like end of the year, you know, in December, we are all motivated. We are all like in high spirits because of the holiday season and everything else, right? But then come January, everything just goes down because, first of all, it's the weather. Secondly, there's nothing to celebrate.
Where's the parties?
And, you know, you just feel so down. You're in that slump and you can't get yourself up. And they do say in January is the hardest time. You
Most
know,
divorces? Yeah.
Even you get into depression and everything else because you also have to pay all your bills that you spent in last year, right? So
that's depressing.
So that is.
Ooh, I put that one away for a minute.
Because I remember, like in Canada, you know, it's so cold, right? And the days get so short and the nights are longer. So, you know, that also, there's no motivation, right? There's nothing like for you to, so what happens then? How do we change that, right? It's like your mind is it's just so down there. So, you know, like kind of give us some tips of how we can get back up, push ourselves up, kick ourselves wherever.
So you guys know I love puzzles and reflections, and actually this kind of weather, like, you know, I should call in sick and just be at home doing a puzzle. But I think when I have these moments, what helps me is revisiting my core beliefs. Like, what am I going to be intentional about in 2024?
Okay.
What belief system will guide those intentions for me? And for months like January, it also falls on my birthday month, so it's very good self-reflection. What did I do?
Birthday! 3 of us. Are you Capricorn?
Aquarius.
Oh, okay.
I'm at the tail end of it. But to really kind of capture what do I really want to do, and maybe I've been putting it off. You know, I love vision boards, like sitting down with your kids and, you know, bringing all those magazines that taking up all, you know, room in your living room and cutting them up, saying like, let's make a vision board about, you know, life and career and work. And then for your kids, that could be school, because school is their work, right? Personal, like my daughter says, you know, I'm gonna have a glow up summer. I mean, they have all this cute lingo, right? Like, I want to try 3 things with my hair this year, or I want to try to go to 3 things that I'm usually anxious about, but I want to get out of my comfort zone. She spends, by the way, on her off day, 7 hours with another good friend of hers doing vision boards and reflections to set her, because this is her senior year, so it's very like anxiety provoking year for her. And so things like that, have conversations, meet with friends that are emotionally in tune with you, and say, what did you observe about me last year? Was I on my off game, or what did I do good from your angle? And being receptive to those kinds of feedback. I'm doing a mini course right now called Mind Management with my leadership class, and because I'm like, we have time management, anger management, we got every kind of management, money management. But I'm like, you know, let's get away from that. We've we've looked at stuff from growth mindset. We've looked at, you know, what happiness, the pursuit of happiness. These are all very vague and lofty. How does our toolbox work in terms of any given stress that you give to your mind? How does your toolbox work versus what mine does? You know, and before we got into this session, you know, I was telling you it was a very challenging year for me.
Right.
And so part of my reflection was like, how did I manage that? And what did I do well? And where did I drop the ball? And I felt like mind management kind of captured that. And so I love kind of having these understandings of how motivation works, because it essentially becomes your superpower. If you know how to navigate and understand your motivation, you can be thrown in any kind of chaos and kind of be okay. You will not unravel if you understand what moves you, what gets you out of bed, what makes you show up to do a task or in your relationships, and you respect your vulnerabilities, you respect your shortcomings, maybe your need for emotional hygiene, or you know, some of us are shy, some of us are super outgoing. Maybe you need to like step it up in connection, maybe you need to scale it back to go regroup in your own space. But what does that look like for you? What does that look like for Arwa? You know, it's different, right? So I see that as a very untapped kind of territory. We don't need a million things to do to add. Who was it that said their son's like, I don't want to have a New Year's? Layla? Yeah, I'm like, good job. I don't need to have a New Year's resolution that I can't follow through with. That's what that child is saying. It's like, it's been overdone. We go to the gym, the parking lot's full on January 2nd, where you can't get on your cardio machine, and then January 6th, it's as if nothing happened. But why? Why is that, right? And I want you to talk about the why of the motivation, because when we lack the why, we're gonna be the person who doesn't go to the gym on January 6th versus January 2nd.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the why that we kind of want to tap back into when the motivation kind of lowers. And it's important for us to create this kind of very robust image of what this change is gonna mean for us in our life, and follow it through with the plan, like you said. So it's normal. There is an emotional cycle of change, and in the first stage, that's when we're like super excited, and at the beginning of the year, we're like, I'm gonna hit the gym, I will eat healthy, I will do all of those things, and that's what they call the uninformed optimism, is the first stage. And then we move to the informed pessimism. That's when we start like, all right, I don't have the time or the money to go to the gym, or my muscles are hurting. We start to see the cost more maybe than the benefit, and then the more we experience the cost of this change, they call that stage the valley of despair. That's where a lot of people quit, and that's when they would stop going to the gym, or their the healthy new diet they're trying, and a lot of times, you know, the going gets tough. We get there, we stop, and then after a little while, we start a new goal. We get really excited, and we go all the way to stage 3, where it gets really tough. However, in that stage, it's really important. Sometimes it's hard to see why did we start all of this, but it's important to kind of take an action every day, even when it's hard for us to see why we're doing it. It's hard to see the benefit. The cost is a lot higher. And then, you know, we keep going. The next stage is informed optimism. That's when we see both. There is a cause, there is also benefit. And the benefit is the reason we're doing what we're doing. And if we're able to follow through and keep going with our plan, then we can find fulfillment and success. And that's the kind of the last stage of that emotional cycle of change.
And by then it's become a habit. So it's become a new norm, a baseline. And typically our brain learns at around 8 to 10 weeks of something consistent and repetition, because we learn that way.
Yeah.
And we're more likely to retain it. Or if we tie it into a relationship, we hear about accountability partners or people who, commit to walking groups or Zumba classes, or they tie the goal to other relationships, where maybe you have a good friend who can really trash talk you when you're skipping or making a lot of excuse not to show up for yourself, and that is effective. That's very effective.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And we can also tie the new habit that we're trying to develop to an old habit. So if, say, I'm trying to go for a walk for 30 minutes every day, well, I already drink a cup of coffee every single morning. So if I tie the walk to something that I'm already doing, I'm more likely to kind of get into my new habit.
Or make the coffee the reward, go for a 20-minute walk.
Always have a reward.
Yes,
you can look forward to.
Well, if you're driving a car that you like and you're comfortable in, you don't want to give up the keys. But if somebody says, hey, let's upgrade, then you'll give up. Hey, look, it's time to do a trade-in. So our brain works that way. We like getting rewarded. That's
all right. So let's just go on a short break, and when we return, we'll continue this great conversation on motivation. This is Chai Time on 103.5 Hum FM. Welcome back to Chai Time on 103.5 Hum FM. We are in conversation with Arwa and Mahtab, and we are talking about motivation. So let's continue our conversation.
Yeah, so one of the things I love about talking about motivational interviewing is it really creates a space for you to have collaboration. And when we were on break, you mentioned some of the tools that you use. I think as clinicians or psychologists, therapists, coach, we shouldn't assume what works for us is going to work for everyone. Instead, we need to be good historians and also get a good inventory of that person's core beliefs, and then start deconstructing those core beliefs, especially the ones that are hindering change for that person. And for that to happen, you can't just go walk up to people or on their first session and start tackling their core beliefs. You won't be making many friends.
You'll be left alone.
That's why relationships are so key. You have to have a very workable relationship with that person and say, you know what, Lynn? I keep hearing you every January. You want to do, you want to start this business idea that you've been talking about. And I'm wondering what's going to be different in 2024. Because it just breaks my heart to see you that excited, and then by March it just kind of fizzles out, right? As your friend, as your biggest fan, how could I make this more realistic for you this year? Or is this really what you want? Like oftentimes in a counseling session, first of all, people want to impress their counselor, and nobody wants to seem crazy. So as human beings, we are socialized to filter through the way we report. So creating a safe space so that people can be authentic and really share their stories of when those things are not happening. So then you can offer the tools that maybe can combat that is really key. Because what happens when you underreport or you misrepresent the reality you live outside of the four walls of a counseling office? You're basically, the therapist thinks one reality, you're living another one, right? And then there's just so much missed area, and there's no communication. So if you're good at establishing a positive, supportive relationship that is non-judgmental, then people are more likely to put their defenses down and give you the true story. And I mean, like, gosh, last Thursday I was a crappy mom. How many people do you know that could like own that? You know, I hit, you know, I didn't even hit my own baseline, and therefore I had guilt, and therefore, I don't know, I had to go overcompensate, and this is what that looked like, right? So how can you help me as my therapist or my counselor on facing my own truths? So if you truly want to assess the motivation and make changes in your life, you have to be honest.
Yes.
I mean, nothing can happen until you can be honest. And then being safe with your provider to say, like, this, I'm messing up. I keep messing up. You know, we don't need to be drug addicts or alcoholics. Sometimes our personality, our approach to parenting, the way we do things, our inconsistencies, they mess us up and they mess up our kids. They throw our spouses into anxiety-driven chaos. Like, we are, I guess, more powerful than we like to think. But imagine if every one of us did a good job on emotional hygiene and self-regulation, and so that our messes are contained and we go to the right space to get the help, so we're not damaging relationships. We're not hindering our goals. I think that's the fun aspect of therapy. You know, in the beginning, there's a lot of chaos and, well, this didn't work. How do I trust you? How do I know you're the one that's gonna fix my problems? And one of my favorite, you know, characteristics, like especially with Arwa was one of our first team members that joined Ibn Sina. She just had this aura of kindness. Like, she's very ethical. She's always studying, even though she knows a lot. She's so humble about everything she knows. So I'm like, this is the making of a pretty amazing team, starting with someone like her.
Oh, yeah.
Because you know, that's exactly what you need to tap into authenticity in other people.
You're giving me a lot of credit, Mata. You're being very...
I'm just trying to pay you back for all the free therapy you give me. We need to get Savoy to sponsor these.
All the chai you've been having there.
We need a sponsorship for table 24.
So is lack of motivation a mental health issue?
It could be tied into chronic depression. It could be tied into chronic illness. You know, imagine living with a medical condition year after year. That will take a toll on your motivation. So that kind of requires a different skill set and approach. You almost want to, you know, like, I remember I had a very committed bipolar patient, and when I used to have a private practice, and we still stay in touch. She's amazing. And I would say, you know, when the depressive cycle of